even when they've increased their fat and they're getting a lot of fat and eating right and being very strict, they're still experiencing a bit of hair loss. So the other thing is just doing a deep dive into your bloods and seeing if there's anything else that's going on there with your vitamins, minerals, hormones, etc. Because it can be very easy to undereat, especially when we're losing weight. Sometimes you want to limit what you're eating in order to facilitate losing weight, but that can be counterproductive for health reasons. And losing hair is sometimes seen when you're undernourished. And so just make sure that you're getting enough food, make sure you're getting enough fat in general. So what's the deal with that and how can we fix it? So first question is from Madeline. She says, I have been feeling awful on and off since going carnivore and it seems to be getting worse. Very sorry to hear that. I feel depressed with lack of motivation, have no energy, cry easily for nothing. At first, it was only before my period that I felt like this. But now it's at other parts of the cycle too. I watched a video with Kelly Hogan and Amber O'Hearn where they talked about some people having a hard time processing larger amounts of protein at once due to liver not processing protein too quickly. The fix would be to spread protein intake over 4 times a day instead. This really resonated with me for several reasons. First, I ate some candy yesterday and ate less protein because of it, and I felt so much better the second half of the day. So it could have been because of lesser protein intake. Second, before when I was ketovore, I was in deep ketosis all the time. But since going carnivore, where I eat more meat and bigger meals, I haven't been able to stay in ketosis, or I am in light ketosis, tested with Keto Mojo. Do you think I need to reduce protein or spread meals out more to ensure I stay in ketosis? Well, I mean, being in ketosis is good. It's neuroprotective. There's benefits of that. But it could also be that you're just not eating as much fat as your body wants either. And that is often why people feel pretty low energy and they don't feel great. Depression could be from not getting enough fat, getting your cholesterol up, normalizing your hormones, giving you energy can certainly help your mental status as well as having higher ketones. So if you feel that, I don't know, what you were eating too differently. I mean, being ketovore means you're eating a lot of meat and animal fat as well as some veggies, just no carbs. The difference between that and carnivore is just not eating the veggies. So, you can still eat the same amount of fat and fat to protein sort of ratio. So it could be that you're eating, more protein, you're not getting enough fat. The real thing is you want to eat enough protein, you want to get enough fat. And if you're someone who has a bit of difficulty processing large amounts of protein at a time, then certainly spreading those out is a good idea. And most people can just have a whole bunch, but if you're someone that can't, then that's fine. Just you can spread those out. And then, but also getting enough fat. So you want to get enough fat, you want to get enough protein. So it's not necessarily you want to get a certain split, but it does seem that people do better, when their calories from fat and protein end up being around, 70-30, 80-20 sometimes. It just depends on the individual concern. Some people need to be much deeper ketosis, like people who have epilepsy or cancer. It seems to be much more important to have your ketone level up higher, and that is protective in a lot of ways. So it sounds like you're in that camp and you need to bump up your protein and potentially even maybe bump up your fat and then either reduce your protein or split them up. It just depends. So you can play with that and just see what works for you. Just try increasing your fat. You can space out your protein meals. You can just go back to eating what you were eating on ketovore minus all the plants as well, and just having the same fat and meat content as well. So it sounds like you might have been getting some of your protein from nuts or seed oils or coconut oil, something like that. Is just replace all that with just animal fats, animal protein, but having the same sort of amounts, and see what that does. And yeah, hello everyone. More people seem to be signing up. That's good. Hello, hello Mike, Danny, and Olivia, Rebecca. Farron, great to see you. Um, from Jared, my wife's grandma, you may remember we discussed recently on the 100 member Zoom, has been experiencing some unusually high glucose numbers in the evenings, even after days of strict carnivore. Last night, her glucose was 185. Ooh, that's very high. Is it too much protein to fat ratio that causes this? It really shouldn't be. You might get like a bit of a transient bump, um, but gluconeogenesis is demand driven as opposed to substrate driven. It's just like you have so much protein, your body just goes, oh, what are we going to do with this? Turn it into glucose. It doesn't really happen. It sounds like she probably has some insulin insensitivity already, because you just won't get massive high glucose numbers like that otherwise. So, is she diabetic already? Is she taking medication? Has she come off the medications? Diabetes does take a while to reverse, and sometimes people need to stay on some form of medications because their bodies have just been pretty damaged from decades of eating these sorts of things that can damage your body. So it can take a long time for that to reverse. And so one thing people do is they get a bit impatient. They say, well, I shouldn't have to take these diabetes medications anymore. They stop them, and then all of a sudden they're having these high glucose numbers. So that's something to think about. I don't know if she has diabetes or if she's taking any medication, but that's something to think about, because getting a glucose of 185 is quite high. So, there might be something going on there. Yeah, after days of streaming. Yeah, that's quite abnormal. It really shouldn't be the high protein, but you can always try it. You can just see, you can trial, eating different things. And if there's something in particular that she's eating that's just spiking things up, just sort of avoid those for a while. And, is she absolutely strict carnivore? She's not sneaking anything, not to say that she would be, but, it's just something you have to sort of think about. And, yeah, and maybe if she's very insensitive to insulin, and her glucose level is blipping up a little bit because of the big protein bolus she's taking in, and maybe her body just can't respond to that as well as it would otherwise. Maybe that's what's causing this. So just try eating different things. Maybe split up the protein throughout the day, and see if that affects things. If it's just happening in the evenings, I wonder why that is. Is that when she's eating her big meal, or is there something else? So try to sort of track what's happening, what she's eating. Is she eating sort of the same thing earlier in the day, and is that giving the same rise, or maybe not giving the same rise? Then it may not be the food that's causing it. If she's eating sort of the same thing at different times and getting different results. So there's a few things that need to be played around with there. So some things to think about anyway. And Madeline, so you just answered me. Yeah, so I just answered Madeline's question. Hopefully you caught that. Oh, you just missed it. All right. Well, you were first on the boat. So yeah, I think you can just watch it later. I think it's yeah, that should be fine. From Matthew, I'm nearly 24 and have heard that at 25 years of age, people lose neuroplasticity, i.e., the effortless learning, supposedly high during childhood, then decreases until around 25. After which only focus and hard work will do. Now I'm carnivore. This seems outright false, unreliable to me. I feel just as alert as I did 10 years ago. I also noticed that after practice of a challenging rhythmic computer game, my skills improved to a meaningful extent in a matter of hours. Sometimes during the practice session itself, sleep is still very helpful, but my ability to learn effortlessly seems to start hours and hours before sleep. And this seems to become more true the deeper in ketosis I am. I can't help but guess that this might be part of why children learn so well at first, and then why they lose tolerance to carbs with age. They learn less fast, partly because of that. Have you looked into that matter, and what are your thoughts? I haven't looked into that specifically, but yeah, I agree that your brain works dramatically different when it's on ketones. And as I've argued for a long time, I think ketones are your brain's primary resource. We only switch to glucose when we have an abundance of glucose in our bodies. Doesn't know what to do with all this stuff, so we stuff it in and we suppress our ketones, and then we don't have enough ketones to run our brain, and so you have to switch to glucose. But your brain always runs on ketones, to at least a small degree, no matter what your state of metabolic state you're in. And then when you get enough ketones, your ketones get up high enough, your brain only runs on ketones. So it only runs on glucose when your ketone levels are not high enough to sufficiently maintain your brain. Because your brain takes a lot of energy in proportion to the size of the organ. It takes a lot of energy. And so you need a lot of energy. And if you don't have a lot of ketones, you're not going to do that. So yeah, as far as kids learning, yeah, maybe, they're going to be drinking milk, are they necessarily in ketosis? Like, I'm not sure about that, but you do notice, I've noticed anyway, just anecdotally, that, kids of my friends who've done carnivore, like these kids just learn so much faster. They're racing through their milestones much quicker than other kids, and they're just doing very, very well. They're just thriving. Your brain keeps going. I mean, your neuroplasticity, early on is very, very, very different than later in your life. Like if you learn a language before you're at the age of 5, you will know that language better than if you learn it at any other point. Like, your brain just works differently. It's very geared up to learning languages. And that's because you need to learn language. You need to understand how to communicate with the rest of the species. And so if you get your kids to, learning languages, when they're very young, well before they go to school, they will learn those languages much more fluently than they ever will throughout the rest of their life. Now, you can learn languages fluently later on, but it'll never be the same as if you learned it before the age of 5. And and also it's interesting because the more languages you learn, the easier it is to learn languages later as well, and so that sort of sets you up for being very having a big advantage later on as well. So, but yeah, your brain absolutely works a lot better now, and like my brain works so much better. When I was studying for my MCATs, I was just because it was easy, I was just doing like whole wheat pasta, and it was, oh, that's so healthy and all that stuff. And I'd have some meat sometimes as well, just because I liked meat. But through the day, I would just sort of make little bits of pasta because it would just take a few minutes, just boil it up, fill me up, and I could just study for hours and hours and hours. And I always had brain fog. And I was always like, why is this happening? Why is my brain not work? I got plenty of sleep the night before, and yet it's just, I woke up fine. Everything was great. And now the rest of the day, I just feel like I'm in a daze. And I think that's what that was from. So, what we eat definitely affects our brains, and negatively or positively. So yes, I think that, that this is definitely a benefit. And, we know that, after injury, stroke, traumatic brain injury, ketogenic diet helps your brain heal. It just does. And so, your brain can heal from a lot of things, but it's a very, very complex structure, and it's not really possible to necessarily heal everything. But you're always making new connections. You're always sort of rebuilding, regrowing, not to the same extent as when you're a kid, but you still have plasticity. So don't believe the hype on that one. I'm just going to switch through, just glance through. So in the comments, do you recommend MCT or collagen or both? So if you want to ask a question in the comments, maybe try to do like, at, Anthony Chaffee or something like that. Just so it highlights, and then I can see it better. Do I recommend MCT or collagen or both? I don't think you need to take any of these things. I don't think you need to take any supplements. I think you just eat meat, and just eat naturally, and you'll be fine. If you wanted to take MCT, you could. I guess it would depend on what the source is from. Most of the time, the sources are from, plant sources, coconut oils and things like that. So I guess it's how it's refined is to take everything out, apart from the MCTs. Um, maybe there's some things that you don't actually want that get along with it, or are they completely isolated? Is it MCT isolate? Collagen, you're going to get plenty of collagen from eating meat. And so you don't need to take all that. I think that realistically, you don't need any supplements on a proper, a proper biologically appropriate diet, proper human diet, as Dr. Berry says, because that's by definition going to have everything that you need in it. So you can take it if you want, but I think that you'll get plenty just from eating fatty meat. And yeah. Okay. Then Meg asks, I have a friend who is exposed to mold in her home for years. She now suffers from inflammation, weight gain, and hearing loss. She found a new doctor who has put her on a plant-based diet. Ugh. I passed on your information and suggested she find your videos on YouTube. Do you know of if anyone has improved on mold exposure symptoms since going carnivore? That's something that I haven't seen too much of, but I have spoken to a few people who have had issues with mold and mold exposure, which is nasty stuff, nasty stuff. And that can cause serious problems. And when you're on carnivore, your immune system is going to be much, much, much stronger. And so you're going to be able to fight these things off. But like when there's mold and there's dust and there's bacteria and there's all these sorts of things that can cause issues. Most of them are just in the background, but in certain circumstances, sometimes they can cause a problem. And so you have these opportunistic pathogens that all of a sudden, once they get hold, then you might be in a bit of trouble. You're in a weakened state for some reason, and then it just gets into you, and or they make these different toxins that are just around you in your environment, and you get exposed to. So it may be that they may need to take medicine as well and get that treated. Some of these things just aren't going to clear on their own, and you have to get help with them. But yeah, I've seen anecdotally a few people that have had mold exposure and problems with that, and that has helped them, and that's something that they noticed did make a difference. But it's still difficult, and you still might need some help with that medication wise. Okay. And Jeff asks, can carnivore help with Lyme disease and Hashimoto's? Famously helps with both of those. So Lyme disease, there have been it's been in the literature, and books have been written about it, helping with Lyme disease and chronic Lyme disease since the 1800s. There was a book written by a lady, I can't remember her name or the name of the book, but she was sick probably with chronic Lyme disease, and she had been bedridden for years. I think something like 7, 8, or 9 years, long time, close to a decade. And she had such low energies that she really couldn't get out of bed. She had to have people help her with meals and everything that she couldn't do. Every doctor that would come into town, this was in the late 1800s, every doctor that would come to town, she would get them like, please help me. What can I do? And they all have their little tinctures and this is and that. It's probably all just, different opiates to make you feel good for a second. And then they get out of town, and after they've sold you the cure, and before you could see that it didn't actually do anything, and nothing helped. And then she came across, Salisbury's book, relation of alimentation and disease. And she was like, oh, okay, this makes sense. I'm going to do this. And so she just started eating red meat. She started eating beef. She couldn't even make it herself. She had to have a neighbor go into town and get it fresh and grind it for her fresh and help her with it. After about 9 months, she got well enough that she could actually walk down like a mile into town and get the beef and come back and prepare it herself. And then after like a year and a half, she was back to normal. And she was so impressed by this, she ended up researching it more herself and writing her own book on it. And so, and there have been a lot of people that I've seen in different discussion groups or people that have I've spoken to directly that have helped Lyme disease. Hashimoto's, I have more direct evidence of this. I treat people with Hashimoto's. We have dozens of patients with Hashimoto's in our clinic, and they all improve on a carnivore diet. All of them. Not all of them have completely resolved. Hashimoto's is one of those that are a bit more stubborn than, say, like Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, which responds very rapidly, as well as rheumatoid arthritis. Hashimoto's takes longer, but immediately your antibodies will start coming down, thyroid function will start coming up, and so there are people that after like a year and a half get complete resolution, and others that sort of still linger on a bit, but they all improve. So yeah, those definitely are helped by this. Question from Madeline in the comments. Can you improve or reverse Parkinson's disease with diet? I think you can improve it. I don't think you're going to be able to reverse it because, well, I mean, there's different causes of Parkinson's, but the mainstay is that the substantia nigra is damaged, and so you're not going to be able to make dopamine properly, and so that's sort of damage done at that point. So it might work better. It might be that you can better utilize what you have left, but there is going to still be a certain amount of damage done, and you're probably not going to recover from that. But it can certainly be preventative for a number of different reasons, and they even find that people with higher LDL cholesterol and saturated fat intake, that's protective against developing Parkinson's later on in life as well, and not eating lectins as well. And so there's definitely benefits on prevention, and benefits once you have it as well, which can also potentially slow down the progression or even stop the progression potentially. It's going to depend on the individual and what's causing it. And but are you going to reverse it completely? Probably not. There's going to be some damage done, most likely. But you're going to improve in 1,000 other ways as well. And so your life with Parkinson's will also improve dramatically, as I've seen with my father and other people as well. Olivia asks, are the Lyme disease results specifically carnivore or keto too? Well, the ones that I've seen were specifically carnivore. There may be literature with Lyme disease and keto. I'm not sure. I'm sure it probably would help because, just being in ketosis, your body's going to run better anyway, and your immune system's going to run better anyway. And so you'll probably be all right. But those anecdotes were specifically carnivore. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying this replay of my YouTube Live. If you'd like to catch a live version and ask your own questions, please go to the next scheduled one, usually every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. All right, see you then, and please enjoy the rest of the Q&A. Okay, so Rebecca asks, she says, okay, please advise based on the information below from a local farmer as to whether we can eat this beef. And the farmer says apparently the cows graze during the summer, but we feed them hay during the winter because there's just no growth or nourishment in the grass. They do periodically get concentrates of sweets for cows that contain molasses, etc. So we are able to work with them and to stop from going feral. We put out mineral blocks after calving for the breeding females, but they will only take it when they know they need it. The garlic licks to help keep flies off them during the summer. Yeah, I don't know about the garlic thing. That's interesting that it keeps the flies off. It just stink like garlic and that keeps the flies away. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's fine. I mean, it looks like it's probably better than most store-bought stuff. Most store-bought, when they're going to a feedlot, they're feeding a lot of grain and things like that. Giving cows, some molasses and things like that. That's a pretty common thing. Like, I don't think it's necessary, or good for the cow. But that can also help with the marbling and getting that intramuscular fat. I don't know why that would stop them from going feral. I mean, there's plenty of ranchers that don't feed their cows molasses, and the cows don't stage a Spartacus revolt or anything like that. Um, and you know, but it does from the sounds of it, it sounds like they're mostly just eating grass and hay, which is basically grass. And so if it's that or store bought, that probably sounds even probably better than store bought. So, but there are definitely ranchers that don't use any of that. That just have just grass or hay in the winter if they don't have enough growth or anything like that. And so you can find those people as well. And Lucia asks, I started in May this year eating carnivore and have had some very positive changes. So until starting carnivore, I was eating vegan since 2018. Wow. Um, but putting on weight as you do, a lot of carbs and sugar available in vegan diets. Um, She's 58, 88 kg, lost 10 kg since starting carnivore, which is awesome. I had very high blood pressure when starting, and now it's much improved, very much improved. Now it's back to normal. That's good. Um, Started with blood pressure medicine in 2017 and increased over time. And in early 2021, started getting swelling in her ankles and was feeling increased pain. And then when I stretched my skin, it felt like it was splitting. Her doctor wanted her to put her on another tablet to support the swelling. However, she refused to add another tablet. I mean, this is the sort of thing you get in these prescription cascades. You just give one thing after the other, after the other, after the other, and then you're giving medications to deal with the side effects of other medications, and then side effects of that medication, and all that sort of stuff. So it does get a bit crazy sometimes. And that's a well-recognized phenomenon in medicine. So her blood pressure now is now normal, 120 over 80, and have halved her tablets and have felt really well, which is great. She just got some blood tests and all seems good, though doctor says kidney results were a little high and has ordered another test to be done to check to see what or why. Probably just need a bit more water. Generally, that will sort of solve most of these things. Your creatinine goes a little high, and then a little more water just sort of sorts that out. Unless you're like in fulminant kidney failure and your body can't deal with the water. That's a different story though. And if it's just your urea that's up, that's not kidney failure and that's not a problem. That's actually good, and it's recognizable, a recognizable phenomenon when you start eating carnivore and just more protein in general. And urea is actually good for you. It's one of your body's strongest antioxidants, and it's very, very powerful. So that's not a problem. If your urea is up and your creatinine is normal, you don't have a kidney problem. And so she eats mainly lamb, pork, spare ribs, eggs, and butter, and has 2 meals a day. But she's experiencing losing half of her hair volume and weakness in her nails and splitting. That's something you see every now and then, and I still don't know exactly why, because most people get much better hair and nails as a result. Quite often, it's from not getting as much fat as the body wants. So that would be the first thing I would do. Obviously, getting off of absolutely everything that you're eating that has to do with plants or sugar or anything like that is the first step. Second step would be increasing the fat load. That seems to help most people. There are, I think, 2 people now that I've spoken to that even when they've increased their fat and they're getting a lot of fat and eating right and being very strict, they're still experiencing a bit of hair loss. So the other thing is just doing a deep dive into your bloods and seeing if there's anything else that's going on there with your vitamins, minerals, hormones, etc. But I would start with jacking up the amount of fat that you're eating and the amount of food that you're eating in general, because it can be very easy to undereat, and especially when we're losing weight. sometimes you want to limit what you're eating in order to facilitate losing weight, but that can be counterproductive for health reasons. And losing hair is sometimes seen when you're undernourished. And so just make sure that you're getting enough food, make sure you're getting enough fat in general. And if that's not doing the trick, then, just get a bunch of blood tests and find out what's going on, and, and see what's happening, because that's generally the exception to the rule. Most people will get stronger, thicker hair and nails, and they'll see that pretty early on. So, just try those things, and then go from there. Any other questions cropping up? Sorry, I'm just going back and forth between both of these. I just want to make sure I'm not missing any questions in the comments. Then, come on. Then Candy asks, at night, I'm terrified of stretching my feet because I get awful cramps in my calves, and I've never had them before. I've tried electrolytes, no electrolytes, lots of water, not a lot of water. Seems to come up a lot in the carnivore community. So what's the deal with that, and how can it be fixed? That's a very good question. It is dependent on the individual. It sounds like you've tried all the normal things, putting in electrolytes. No, having some electrolytes, cover your bases, that's fine. It's generally magnesium if it's going to be anything. And then definitely more water is better than less water, unless you're just, rinsing out all of your electrolytes. But if you're taking electrolytes and you're drinking a lot of water, you should be fine. Most of the time, I find that when it's late stages of carnivore, you've been carnivore for, a few months or a few years, and you start getting cramps, it's most often because you're getting dehydrated. And it can take several days of drinking enough water to sort of get back up. And I've even noticed that with myself when I'm just, I'm just working all the time. I'm just not getting hot because for some reason, it's just like, it's like the damn Sahara at the hospitals. Like you just can't get water very readily. And so, or it's like freezing cold, like from the water machine. So it's just like you try to drink this stuff and you get like brain freeze if you want to drink anything more than a cup or two. And so I find that I get very dehydrated. And so if I'm not very careful with my hydration, all of a sudden I'll get very bad leg cramps as well, and have like that same thing where you don't want to stretch out, because all of a sudden it will just kick these things off. So I don't have a great answer for you. I would just try continuing on what you're doing, but in more regularly. So day after day after day, consistently raising your water level, getting more than 3-4 liters a day, and then drinking more if your body is telling you to. If that's what if you're thirsty for more, then drink more, and doing that consistently day after day after day after day for several days in a row, because it can take a number of days to build up before you get any some traction on these sorts of cramps. And that's what I notice in people that I speak to, and I've noticed in myself as well. It would take days. It would take days of drinking more and more water to catch up. And then if you wanted to take electrolytes during that too, you could. It could be, it could be a bit, counterproductive. Like if you're taking all those electrolytes, and maybe that your body's like flushing out more to try to get rid of the excess, minerals and electrolytes in your piece, you could, sort of be shooting yourself in the foot there. But, if you're trying electrolytes consistently and it's not helping, then give water a go. You can also just check your electrolytes and check your magnesium and calcium. And if those are low, then those are the ones you need to top up. It would be unlikely that they're low, but if they are, that's when you want to top them up. And otherwise, just hose in the water. That's generally what's causing the problem. But it sounds like you're doing all the right things. I would just do it. Just keep it up and keep it consistent, and do it for several days or a week or more, and then consistently after that, because you're going to need to maintain whatever you're doing, whatever hydration level, or if it's electrolytes, then electrolyte level, you're going to need to maintain that ongoing. So, you just need to sort of make that positive change and maintain and keep it going consistently. Is there an ask button? No, I don't think there's an ask button. It's just in the live chat. But I think if you put at Anthony and it brings up my name, you sort of push tab. It should tag me in it, and then it'll sort of highlight my name, and then that can be a bit more noticeable for me. So if I do this, yeah, like that. There you go. So Jared just did that. So he just did at Anthony Chaffee MD, and it popped up, and so that's highlighted orange for me. And so I've just done that with your name, and hopefully that highlights that for you. So if you do that, then that just pops that up, and that gets my attention, because otherwise it's a bit difficult, because I can't actually readily see everything that's designed as a question. Okay, so Olivia posted a question. Someone else on Carnivore today said they have aching kidneys. That's not good. That's not good. Would you give the same advice, i.e. water or anything else they need to do? Well, I mean, it depends. I mean, it depends on what's causing the aching kidneys, right? So, I mean, if they have like kidney stones and something like that, then, well, yeah, then actually the answer would be the same. You do want to sort of flush that stuff out. But also, your organs are viscerally innervated, so the nerves that are in them, they aren't somatic, so you can't, like, you touch here. I know where I'm being touched. I close my eyes. I know exactly where I'm being touched, right? So it's not the same with your organs, your visceral organ, your viscerally innervated structures. They're more general, and so you get a pain. Something's bothering it, and you get more of a general pain in that sort of general area, but it's not like pinpointed, like, oh, that's my kidney necessarily. And so it would just depend. But if you're having kidney issues, or having kidney stones, or you're having all that sort of stuff, water is a good idea in general. But it just depends on what's going on. And if you're having that sort of pain, then and it's ongoing, it's not sort of resolving after a few days, it's probably best to get it checked out. Talk to a doctor about that. Or you can just type in capitals question for Dr. Chaffee. But if you tag me, and it highlights my name, that's much easier. And so I think that's most of the questions for I think it's all the questions that we had that have been submitted. So now it's just basically any burning questions and things you desire to know. So take your shots. So question: my brother is in a wheelchair and deals with chronic bed sores issue. I'm so sorry to hear that. That's very difficult. I did plastics. I was thinking about going into plastics in medical school when I was at Duke. I did a term at Duke in plastics, and we dealt with bed sores a lot. They can be a very, very, very difficult thing to deal with and treat. Deals with chronic bed sore issues. Starting Carnivore 6 weeks ago. No weight yet. I'm assuming no weight loss. Is this something to concern ourselves with? Well, no, you don't necessarily have to worry about weight loss. I mean, I'm assuming you mean weight loss. There started Carnivore 6 weeks ago, no weight loss. You would expect some weight loss. Like, I mean, even just the water weight changes that you'll get when you sort of get rid of the carbs and the glycogen and the water weight. That you would expect to lose some weight. But I mean, the most important thing is just being healthy and just eating what's good for his body and sort of letting him get on with that. It should help with bed sores, because you're going to increase the amount of protein that you have. You're going to increase your body's immune system and ability to heal from wounds, and you will and the collagen will be much healthier and stronger, so it can protect you from developing them in the first place, or developing them as badly, and then they can heal better as well. I mean, the main thing with bed sores is the nurses need to be moving him constantly. It can be very, very tricky, but that is something that, with proper rolling and moving, and it's constant, it's very difficult, you have to be on top of this. That is something that can largely be avoided if done carefully. And then after that, when you're dealing with this sort of stuff, carnivore can help, and carnivore will just help in general, because it will just be healthier in general. um and the weight loss will come. Weight loss always happens eventually. Some people take a little longer, some people even gain weight at first, but they feel healthier, and they are healthier the whole time, and then eventually their their weight will follow suit. And so I wouldn't be too worried about that, as long as he's eating the right stuff, and eating enough is very important. um Yeah. So yeah, so I think everyone's playing with the with the highlight thing now, and so yeah, enjoy that. Does anybody else have any questions? We'll sort of roll back through. Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, the Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products, because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work, and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right, thanks guys. Why are you only saying hi to people in Vegas? That's funny. I didn't think there were that many people in Vegas. Okay. So is there anything else that people wanted to talk about, just in general? It could be, just isn't necessarily anything, to ask me personally, but just in general, is anything any people are interested in. I don't know if I announced this, but I was doing a big presentation to my department in neurosurgery, and talking about the metabolic theory of cancer. What my what my interview with Professor Seafried, we sort of delved into, and presented all the, well, not all, but a lot of the data on the metabolic theory of cancer, that this is stemming from the mitochondria, and that, very simple, straightforward dietary changes, getting people into high state of ketosis and low glucose levels, is very beneficial for fighting cancer. And actually going through the studies that have already been done for various cancers, and specifically brain cancers, primary brain lesions and gliomas, and showing that there's actually already been randomized control trials with 20 people, so it's not a huge one, but and then other trials, prospective trials, retrospective case series, looking at people that have been treated, like Cedars-Sinai Hospital in New York, and and showing that they've actually done very, very well, and this has improved their survival and progression-free survival, which is really the only metric that matters in these sorts of things. And it actually went over very well. I was very nervous on how it would be received, but people were actually very interested, and it was like, wow, okay, that's good. I remember one of the professors of neurosurgery, when I told him the topic of my talk, you could tell he was a bit nervous. He was just like, oh, okay, all right, well, because we were talking about maybe proposing that we do a trial ourselves. And so he just said, okay, well, okay, that's fine, but you need to maybe do a literature review. I mean, this is supposed to be a literature review, and he was you could tell he was a bit nervous about how it was, and even he said at the end of it that he was a bit like, wow, this is a bit out of left field, and hopefully it goes well. But he said that it actually made him really think and reconsider the situation with primary brain tumors, and actually even asked. I said, hey, you should do a study on this, which is exactly what I wanted in the first place. So that's something that we're going to get going. So I'll be working with the department to set up a study and go through the ethics approval and all the other good stuff. and start getting another study going. Potentially join up with Dr. Matthew Phillips. He has a trial going, prospective trial going in New Zealand with his glioblastoma patients. And so we might be able to join that and make that a multi-center study, which when you do a multi-center study, it's always better, more well received in the scientific community. You're like, hey, there's multiple centers here and we're all getting the same results. Okay. So that's something that's very powerful in convincing people that this is actually good information and good data. So that's something that I'm looking into now. So that's very, very exciting. It does mean that I've signed myself up for the next, sort of 5-6 years of a lot of work and stats and data entry. But whatever, I'll do it. I'm happy. I'm very stoked about that. So that was a very positive thing, and hopefully be able to get bigger study, have this be a bigger study, and get more and more and more information out there. And also just it gives me a way to reach people and say, hey, why don't you give this a try? And it's part of a trial, it's official, and then let people really improve their health as a result. So that's something I was very happy with. So that just happened last week Monday. It went well. So I've been pretty happy about that since. Madeline asks, woman I know with Parkinson's got the advice to eat less protein from meat and more from lentils and beans. Well, of course they did. I mean, everybody is just bashing meat and saying this plants are so great and meat's so bad for you, and so you need to avoid it, but you still need protein, so get it from beans and lentils, all that nonsense. But again, there was a study in 2015 out of Denmark looking at thousands upon thousands of people who had their vagus nerve cut. And we know that lectins, which are abundant in lentils and beans, to the point that if you don't cook them and prepare them properly, they'll kill you, that they can actually track up your vagus nerve and get into your brain and damage your substantia nigra. Okay, so we have studies showing that. And they found that people who got a vagotomy, who cut the vagus nerves bilaterally, because you have two of them, that they were 66% less likely to get Parkinson's. So they studied everyone who got a vagotomy, who got their vagus nerves cut between like the mid-1970s and mid-1990s. So it was like it's 20 years of data, and 66% reduction in Parkinson's. So I disagree for that, but also because they have a ton of other things in them that are harmful to you. And people say like, well, if you just heat treat them, then that gets rid of them. Well, first of all, not everyone heat treats these things. There's a lot of things in cereals that aren't heat treated, and you're just eating these things raw oats, all these sorts of things that we consume. The raw food vegan people, they're like, oh, you have to eat this stuff raw. That's all the way to go. And it's like very much isn't. And beans and lentils, I mean, you don't actually get rid of all the lectins. You don't. And so, and lectins are just, tip of the iceberg. That's one problem out of, potentially hundreds or even thousands that are in that bean or seed or grain or whatever plant. So, I fully disagree with that for a number of different reasons. But it's not surprising. I mean, it's just, there's a big plant-based push, and unfortunately doctors don't know anything about nutrition. And unfortunately, and more unfortunately than that, dietitians and nutritionists are flat out taught the wrong things. And so it's not even that, we don't teach nutrition in medical school. It's that no one teaches proper nutrition. No one is teaching nutrition as it pertains to a proper human diet. No one ever contended that plant-based was how we evolved. No one, until just now when people started pointing out like, hey, that doesn't make sense. When the whole paleo thing came out, like, well, we were eating meat. Like, we were hunter gatherers. We're eating meat, maybe some plants, but really not that many, and if at all. And And so people are sort of challenging that. Well, hey, wait a minute. Should we really be eating this stuff, or should we not be eating meat? And they say, oh, well, no, actually, we're herbivores, and I mean, look at our teeth. Our teeth are clearly herbivorous. I'm like, no, they're not. And so this is just insane. But yeah, so it's just everything's just pushing this whole plant-based agenda. But as I pointed out before, the WHO, who is very anti-meat and very pro plant-based or meat alternative, you know, they have an entire page on their website talking about natural toxins in food. And it says toxins in food. It doesn't say toxins in plants. It says natural toxins in food. And so it goes through all these different toxins in the foods that we commonly eat. And every single one comes from plants or algae. Every single one. And so the only connection to meat is that animals eat this algae that has these toxins in them, and then that goes up the food chain into the bigger fish that we eat, and that can be a problem, more than shellfish as well, right? That's not the animal. That's not the meat itself. There's no they identified no toxins in meat, inherent in meat. Not, zero, zero. All right. The only things that they said were like this stuff that the animal ate that then became a problem. Okay. The animal itself was not the problem. And so, I'm sorry, but like, people have all these like theoreticals like, oh, well, it can, change mTOR and it can do this and potentially do that and maybe gut biome. And like, they just make things up. And it's like, oh, there's this epidemiological study and this is like, 18%, increased risk of bowel cancer in people who smoke and drink and drive too fast and increase all-cause mortality. I'm like, yeah, you think? It's nonsense. There's no hard science to back it up. There's a lot of hard science to back up the fact that plants are toxic. WHO even talks about it, and the WHO, their agenda is completely against eating meat. So it's not like they're pushing an agenda. So unfortunately, that's just the world we live in right now. There's a lot of misinformation and flat out lies, and that's one of them. So I would not recommend eating beans and lentils for someone with Parkinson's. I would not recommend eating that for anyone ever. I think that stuff is poison. Jared asks, when are you going to interview Thomas Sowell? That would be a dream come true. I don't know if he would ever agree to speak with me, but like, my God, I've never fanboyed over anyone in my life besides Thomas Sowell. Like, I mean, I just absolutely love that guy. I would just love the opportunity to talk to him about carnivore and try to convince him to get on carnivore, just to get him as healthy as he possibly can be, and so that we could have another 20, 30, 40 years of that man's intense genius. Maybe I don't know, maybe my platform is getting marginally big enough to sort of attract the attention of people like him. That would be amazing. If I could, I'd have to think of some actual real things to to interest him to talk about that would be worth his while. But yeah, that would be just amazing if he would be willing to do that. Just love that guy. Lucia asks, what is a good amount of fat to have? Meat, fat, and butter at the same meal. Just as much as tastes good, really. And then go by how you're feeling. If you're not feeling your best, if your hair's not doing well, if your skin's not doing well, if your energy levels are low, if your stools are dry and hard, you need to eat more fat. That's a good rule of thumb. And then go by your stool. I think that's a good metric. As long as you're not drinking coffee or taking artificial sweeteners, both of which are laxatives, then you can tell how much fat you're getting by the stools you're eating. If you haven't had any surgery or anything like that, or any medical conditions that predispose you to having disrupted bowel motions. But if they're dry and hard, you're not getting enough fat, definitely. And if they're very loose, then you're eating a lot more fat than your body can absorb. And So you can just pull back if you want. You don't have to. There's a natural spillover effect, and it's not harmful. It's just very inconvenient. And if you're just getting a nice, soft, normal consistency stools, that's when you are in the sweet spot for fat. And so Mike asks, who are some guests that you have lined up to interview coming up or have reached out to? I reached out to Dr. Laszlo Borosh, who's a retired professor of pediatric medicine at UCLA Medical School. And apparently he's like a protege of Dr. Gabor Somlai, who I interviewed about deuterium, and so this is a very prominent, high up academic, full professor of medicine in one of the top medical schools around, and he is very learned and knowledgeable in this, and he thinks there's a lot to the deuterium thing in health, and so I'll be talking to him tomorrow, actually. Then I've actually interviewed several people that I haven't put up yet. There's Andrew Scarborough's that gentleman who's had a glioblastoma, brain cancer. He got debulking surgery and then and then didn't get any treatment after that. And he's alive 10 years later. Now he's actually doing human trials in GBM and starting one up in England. And then Dr. Philip Ovadia, who's a cardiac surgeon in Florida, wrote that book, Stay Off My Operating Table. So that's really great. Having like a cardiothoracic surgeon, someone who deals with the end stage repercussions of heart disease. He's saying, eat meat, eat carnivore, eat a lot of fat. This is what's good for you. This is what is going to help you and help reverse your disease and prevent it from coming up in the first place. So it's very good to get people like him, and Dr. Seema Malhotra, who I've had on before, who are able to, really from the ground level in their profession dealing with heart disease, tell you, hey, this is we got it wrong. I also interviewed Rachel Brown, who's a psychiatrist in Scotland, and talking about how dramatically diet affects mental health and even psychiatric conditions, which is quite remarkable. And then I need to publish Sophia Clements as well from Paleomedicina, talking again about brain cancers and just cancers in general being treated by them with dietary measures. And then like Sally Norton as well, we dove into the whole oxalate thing, which was something that I knew about peripherally, but didn't know all about. And she's just written a book as well, mostly about oxalates, but also just talking about plant toxins in general. And so that's those are some ones that will be upcoming. And then I was just on with Chris Bell, who's I think it's Chris and Mark Bell, who goes by like Smelly Bell or something like that. They're like powerlifters and weightlifters and bodybuilders, and they had since the 90s. And Baker's been on with them a few times, and so he just had me on his podcast this week, so that'll be coming out. I was on a podcast with Thomas DeLauer as well, who obviously is a big keto proponent and has quite a big platform and talks and tries to dig into the research and dig into the studies as well, and talk about things from an evidence-based point of view, which I think is a good way to do it. I like carnivore more than keto, obviously, but we're certainly on the same side of the pitch, and so it's good to talk to people like him who have made a big impact in diet and nutrition, and are trying to have people on and talk about things from an evidence-based point of view. I think is um, a very good approach. So yeah, so there's some upcoming things. I don't know if that one's out yet, actually. I don't know. I'll have to check. He hasn't said anything to me yet, but he said he was going to have that come out sort of in a few weeks, and that was a few weeks ago. So who knows? And then my talk with that I gave at that medical conference, sort of the low carb medical conference, low carb down under. That'll be coming out, I think, on November 6th. So just over the weekend, maybe, or early next week. And so, yeah, so there's a few things in the pipeline, and then I have to set up other interviews coming up. I've got a number of them that are sort of in the backlog that I have to sort of get out, that I'm sort of waiting to put out. I don't like putting out too many at a time, just because they are longer form interviews, and I think people get a bit overwhelmed watching these things anyway, and maybe don't want too many of them to come out at one time. Olivia asks, do you have any good interviews? I think that was basically the same question. Do you have any good interviews coming up, or don't any good ones lately? So yeah, just answer that. Oh, come on. Why do you skip around? Any vegans willing to interview with you? Yeah, we tried to get Simon Hill on. That hasn't, it's not that that's not going to happen necessarily. But I was traveling, and then he was traveling. I had my surgery, and then as soon as I was sort of like 2 days after I had my surgery, he went on vacation, and I think he's probably back at this point. I'll have to touch base with him again, but basically we're trying to plan something, and between my schedule, his schedule, and Lane Norton's schedule, Lane was going to sort of moderate our discussion, which I don't think we necessarily need a moderator. I think we just should have a discussion and just have an actual friendly discussion, and talk about things. I think that would be very, very positive. But between the three of us, it's been difficult to find something. So I don't know. I don't know when that's going to happen, but that's sort of where that left off, is when people were going on vacation, things like that. So I'll have to touch base with them again. But I'm happy to talk about any of these guys. I've had little to no luck getting anyone to engage, and I'm not even trying to attack anyone. I just want to actually have conversations, and I've had tons of conversations with people off camera, and and they've been very positive, with people like vegans and vegetarians and things like that. And it's just getting them to actually do it on camera is a bit more difficult. So we'll see. Andrew Huberman, that would be cool. I don't know if he'd care to be on my tiny podcast with his massive following, but you never know. It could be. He's very interesting dude. I haven't seen. My podcasts are long. His are really long. So it's like some of these things are like 3 hours. I'm like, I don't have that much time to watch these things, unfortunately. I would actually watch more of his stuff if they were in more bite-sized chunks, just because like I don't have feature length film or 2 feature length films worth of time available to me at any point in my life these days. So unfortunately I can't really do that, which is a shame, because they're the ones I have watched are very interesting, and I like his stuff. Testing Olivia. And Dr. Vadia would be a great one from Danny. Says Dr. Vadia would be a great one for me, as I've had a heart attack at 39 and was told I had familial hypercholesterolemia, I'm assuming. Carnivore diet for 2 years now, which is great. Awesome. that's gonna significantly benefit you and keep your inflammation down and keep this damage and clotting and further damage from happening. So good job. I wonder, Danny, if you've gotten your coronary artery calcium scores checked, and if that's you've been seeing that come down, which we normally do, but it's always good to ask. Um, and that's already on Patreon. What's on Patreon? Is that the low carb down under was on Patreon tomorrow? When's that coming out? Olivia, do you remember? You'll know. Jared asks, would you consider doing interviews with Patreon supporters? I think stuff like that would be less intellectually stressful for your average viewer. Yeah, absolutely. I think just doing things with people that have had a go at carnivore, whether successful or even if they're having difficulty with it, that can be beneficial for people. Just see like what are the pitfalls and how are they dealing with them, and it's not just me that's having these problems, and how do I go about it, or other sort of just success stories and things like that. I think those would be very, very helpful too. So yeah, those are definitely that's definitely worth doing. I'd be happy to do that. Rebecca says Huberman's videos are time code. So you watch only bits of interest you. Yeah, that's a very good point. And that's sort of the only way I've actually watched his stuff is with the time codes. But even then, like, it's just, it would be nice to sort of see the whole argument in its totality, and because everything fits together as well. Because he's a professional lecturer. He's a lecturer at Stanford, and so the man knows how to put a lecture together. And so I'm sure the whole thing would actually be very, very worthwhile, and I would like to do that. So, but yeah, the only things I have sort of seen so far are just looking at chunks on the time codes, which is something I need to do as well. It's just another bit of time that I haven't been able to put together, is just sort of going through and doing the time codes as well, because that's very helpful for people. And it makes it easier for people to navigate through and find the bits that they want, and or even come back to and like, oh, that was interesting, I'll come back and watch that. And so that's something I'll have to do too. And yeah. So Olivia says, my low carb down under talk will be on Saturday, 6 a.m. my time for patrons. Oh, great. I'm actually doing a YouTube live with Ken Berry this weekend. I think that's at 5 a.m. on Saturday the 5th. Let me see, make sure. It's either 5 or 6 a.m. I think it's 5 a.m. No, it's 6 a.m. 6 a.m. It's 5 p.m. Central Time. That's what it is. So 5 p.m. Central Time in America, which corresponds to 6 a.m. in Perth, because I'm 13 hours ahead of Central Time in the U.S. So that's the idea. I'll be doing a live with him at 6 a.m. on Saturday, and then I'm doing a lecture at my department at like 8 in the morning. So I'll be doing that live and then running straight over to do another presentation talking about spinal cord tumors and intramedullary and extramedullary tumors inside of the dura of the spinal cord, which is thrilling to absolutely no one that doesn't do surgery on the spine. But yeah, so that's what it'll be. But I'll definitely watch it later that day. And I'm on call this weekend, so we'll just have to see how my schedule is, and just go from there. But yeah, I'll have to see how embarrassed I am from my from my talk and all the different things that I forgot to talk about. That I was like, oof, why the hell didn't I remember to say that? And then I'll have to go through the slides as well and do another thing like with the why we were carnivores one. And just go through that and actually, make it a point to say the things that I want to say, because I didn't, I just sort of was trying to hurry the talk along and not take a massive amount of time. And so I sort of sped through some things and missed some points that I wanted to make. So love when Doc sits in and answers questions when a recorded video plays. Feels like he's able to be more engaged that way. Well, thank you. But yeah. Oh, and you're saying Andrew Scarborough is what's already up on Patreon. Yeah. So that's a really interesting one. He's very interesting person to talk to. Just in general, he's just a very bright guy, and very nice guy as well. And it's just an amazing story that, I mentioned this before, but for those who don't know, the type of brain tumor he has is the most aggressive form of glioblastoma, which is like the most aggressive form of cancer that you can get. And so on average for all GBMs, from time of diagnosis, if you don't get treatment, it's a 3-month life expectancy on average. And for his specific type, it'd actually be much less than that. It would be the average. And so, for him to just get a debulking and actually leave some tumor there because it's in a very important part of the brain that controls the motor function of the whole side of your opposite side of your body. You can't go in there and dig that out. And so had to leave that alone. And then he just said, nope, I'm not doing chemo. I'm not doing radiation. And because there's no point, because the kind of cancer he had wouldn't respond to it anyway. And he just went down dietary pathways and the tumor shrunk and it's basically gone. He came off all of he was on multiple different seizure medications. He's come off all of them. His doctor is saying, you cannot come off your seizure medications. You will die of seizures if you come off of them. You can never come off of these things. And so they would not help him wean off, which is a very dangerous thing to do. Actually, you have to do it very, very slow and controlled and carefully. And he did it himself. He said, I want to come off these stupid things. I think I'll be fine. And he was right. And he now takes no medications, no seizure medications, and had no treatment. And he is alive 10 years down the line and now doing his own trials and research into treating GBM with therapeutic ketosis. So, which is great. It's an amazing story. Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. Well, it's sort of been an hour, 15 minutes, and I think we're out of questions. So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you guys tuning in and submitting questions, and we'll just keep doing these things, and as we'll try to find better and better times that are more and more available for people to come to. I understand that in the evenings for me is way too early in the morning for other people, and so I'll try to do mornings my time, which will end up being in the afternoons or really evenings in the US, and maybe that'll be easier with people with work and commitments during the week. And then we have our weekend Sunday, Saturday Zoom as well. So we'll keep trying to play with it. Today, unfortunately, I was on call overnight, so I couldn't really schedule anything this morning, and I start pretty early most days, and so we'll just have to play with it. So, okay, guys, thank you very much. Hopefully that answered all your questions and it was helpful to people. And just, keep submitting questions and that you want to know about, or just come in and have a chat and talk, and we can talk about anything else that comes up during the talk. Okay, guys, have a good night and rest of your strict carnivore. You have to look at stress and get out other things in your environment, and cut out the beef, pork. No, sorry, not the beef. The pork, chicken, and farmed fish. Especially farmed fish is terrible. Just cut out the dairy for good measure. You just play it as safe as possible, and just go red meat and water.